Hi, Thomas. How's your day?
My day's pretty good. How's your day?
You know, it's a Monday. It's always wild,
Yeah, true.
but there you go. We have them every Monday, so there we go. We're gonna wait a minute or two to see who pops in. Otherwise, it'll be just you and one of our other agents today.
Okay.
And today is about dates and deadlines,
Okay.
which seems to be the hardest one for everybody to do. All righty, let me go to sharing. Hang on just a minute here. Danae, if you have any questions as I'm going through everything, just pop in.
Okay.
Yeah, here's another. I knew that we'd have a few more here. Oh, wait a second. They're on realtor time. They are.
Very true. I think it's because we try to always get one more thing done, one more thing.
Oh, I got a whole stack of it today, so I understand totally. So we'll let Laura pop in here and all right, we have another. Oops, she came back in again. Laura, are you on?
Yep,
Okay, I just want to make sure.
just
So-
got on.
That's fine. Let me go to the sharing one. Oops, wrong one. Hang on just a second. Now we'll do that. All right, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're going to the buy-sell contract to look at the dates and deadlines and why we put things where we put them and why do we have the deadlines on the dates that we do. Okay, so the first one is the time of day deadline. So that means anything in our contract that is not otherwise stated, such as the acceptance date and those types of things, is going to fall on a different time. So instead of being 11:59, which you can leave this blank, but I strongly suggest you put something in here. And you want to put something as between like 6 and 8. I wouldn't go much past 8. And the reason being is because what happens is if you go too much past 8 or 9, what will happen is your seller or your buyer, if they've been at work and they have kids and they come home and they're eating dinner and they're trying to get all the stuff done, may not make a good decision on whether they want to take that inspection objection and make a resolution of it. So it's real important that you guys keep in mind who your clients are. And if you want to change that and leave it at, you can leave it at 11:59, but I don't think any of us want to be working at midnight. So somewhere between 6 and 9 is a really good time frame. So our next time is alternative earnest money deadline. Years ago, we used to make 4 copies of the contract and bring the earnest money physically to the office. But since we went on computers and we don't have our earnest money delivered at the same time our contract is, we had to put a new alternative deadline in there. So I would suggest that you want to put it anywhere from 3 to 5 days after your acceptance deadline. And because if it falls over a weekend, you want to make it a few more days if it's in the week. So if you had to accept it on Monday, you want to deliver it maybe by Thursday or Friday. But you want to put a time in there that you say, yes, my buyer is in earnest in purchasing this property. If they don't turn the earnest money in and they back out, the seller has a right to sue them for damages. So if your client wants this house, I strongly suggest deliver the earnest money and back out for another reason. Saves a lot of hassle along the way. So our next one is the recorded deadline, title deadline, and tax certificate deadline. I would suggest that you put this deadline out somewhere between a week and a half to 2 weeks out. It is the responsibility of the listing agent. Make sure you please give them enough time to get this done. The only time you're going to have trouble getting your tax certificate is probably going to be in January when all of the assessments and taxes change. So take that into consideration when you're writing your offer. The record title objection deadline is a deadline that we have. Listen, Mr. Buyer, is there anything that you object to that you see, flight pattern, that empty lot, that you don't like what's going to be built there? Back up, I'm doing the wrong one, sorry. Record title deadline is 2 to 3 days after, maybe 4 days after receipt of title. If there's something in that title that the buyer doesn't like, or you see there's a mechanicals lien or it's over encumbrance, which please be very careful of this in the coming year and a half or so, because what's going to happen is many houses are going to go into foreclosure or short sale or something like that as time goes on. And if there's something in there you don't like, object to it. And then you have a deadline. And then on 7 in paragraph 8, item 7, paragraph 8, where the resolution after you've given it to your objection and put in 2 or 3 days after for your objection. So the record title number 3 is from the listing agent. Record title objection is you, the selling agent, and resolution is between the buyer and the seller of whatever has been objected to. Off record title deadline is if the buyer says, what's that vacant lot behind my house, and they discover it's going to be a high rise and they don't like that, then they can object and get out of the contract on off matters, off record title objection deadline. And I always make these deadlines the same as the record. Just make sure you have things that are in order. So the first one is for the tax and the title, and the second is objection. So your off title record or off record title objection deadline is the same for objection. That way you have everything in order, and you're squishing it in the first week and a half to 2 weeks of your contract. Now, your association document deadline is the deadline that the listing agent has to get you, the selling agent and the buyer, all of the documents in paragraph 7. And if you're the listing agent, don't have all those documents, make sure you send an email saying what was sent to us all we had. My suggestion is that you ask the title, your seller, that the title company get all the documents on paragraph 7. And for about $150, I think is what they charge. But this way you're not in default on paragraph 7. So make sure your buyer looks through these documents, especially the financial ones, and make sure that they are okay with it and they don't have an objection. So no, they can't paint their house Bronco orange, and they're going to terminate on that, and they can absolutely do that. So now we go down to the seller's property disclosure. Any of you that were on the call with Davian last week about our changes in our contracts, in our listing contracts, your best practice is to have your seller fill out the seller property disclosure at the time of listing. Then if you ask, when you get an offer in, you ask your seller, Mr. Seller, Has anything changed? Did you have a leak, a roof leak? Did you have something repaired? And if it doesn't, then send that on to the new buyer. Same with the lead-based paint disclosure deadline. Okay, so this is a deadline in which the listing agent has to give the buyer the lead-based paint disclosure for sales. So I make these two the same because you want to do it in the first 3 or 4 days after you've got your contract accepted. So be sure, unless it falls on a Saturday or Sunday. Now let's talk about the new loan application deadline. This is a deadline in which the lender has to have the signed contract, a address and legal description of your property. If you put in there done or complete, that is incorrect. You're really completing, you're doing fraud. The lender cannot complete the application unless the legal description and the address is attached to the application. Then that's according to the TRID laws of, like, I don't know, 10 years ago. Now, the new term deadline says, hey, Mr. Buyer, here's your terms and conditions. And are you okay with it? I would suggest strongly, if you want to be a good, strong buyer, I would have the buyers do that within the first 1.5 to 2 weeks. Now, what you're going to see if you're a listing agent is that deadline is closer to closing. I would counter that, but that's just me. If they don't like the term, if the 2 weeks pass and all of a sudden the buyer says, hey, I don't like these terms and conditions, it's a good shot they're going to lose their earnest money. So they better be real sure that that's the terms and conditions they want. Now we do the new loan availability deadline, is a deadline that you put about 1.5 week to 1.5 weeks prior to closing. This is to say the loan that the buyers signed under new loan term deadline is still available and it's we're ready to close. If that loan is not available, then the buyers will get their earnest money back. But that's the only way if you don't, the buyers are going to get their earnest money back. Those 3 dates are usually used incorrectly most of the time, especially the new loan term deadline. So make sure you understand and the buyer understands what happens if they agree to these terms and then change their mind. It could be that they would lose their earnest money, and I'm almost sure they would. Okay, 16 through 21, we rarely use. And it's just there is an assumption and stuff like that, but it's so rarely used, we don't have any dates. If you ever get to a point where you need one of these, call me, we'll work it out. Now, our appraisal deadline is a deadline that is about, I would say, 1.5 to 2 weeks prior to closing. It has to have been done. If the appraisal comes in and doesn't have the agreed upon selling price in it, and you have to object, you need a document to object, and you need to give the other agent and seller a copy of the appraisal. You need to resolve any issues. Let's say you had a loan that came in 10 grand below what everybody agreed to. Now you have to resolve that we're going to split it, or the seller's going to come down 10 grand. In the atmosphere that we're dealing with now, I'd say you go to the seller and say, if you want to get this sold, you want to reduce it 10 grand. So these are dates that should be 1.5 to 2 weeks prior to closing. And understand, if you have a quick closing of like 30 days, you need to have a conversation with the lender to make sure that they can actually close the loan when you want to close. If you don't have a conversation with the lender and you put these dates arbitrarily, you're locking the lender into something they cannot do. And that will create a problem. Please do not assume that a seller is going to give you an extension on anything, on any dates. Don't play that game because you'll lose. Now, a survey or ILC is you don't need dates in here if you're dealing with a townhome or condo, because there is no ILC or survey. If you're doing a normal lot and block plus, or if you're dealing in acreage, you want to ask for one or the other. You always want to make sure that if you're in acreage, I'm asking for a new survey. And if they say, hey, the listing agent should counter back, I've got a ILC that was blah, blah dates. And are you okay with that? And if the buyer is okay, then you move forward. But on acreage, I would encourage you to say new survey because it's important. You also need to understand that if you are getting a survey, it's could be anywhere from $3,000 to several thousands of dollars. It could be 10, depending on the acreage, but it could be 10 or 15,000. It could be more. So also you have to understand how long does it take to get a new survey? That's another piece of the puzzle if you're doing acreage. So now you get it done. If there's any objections and you resolve. So you do that very quickly in this time frame here, 1 to 2, 3 days. So then now we're going down to
Donna, may I ask you
Yeah.
a question?
yes.
So I've had those deals where they said the seller already has a survey, but am I incorrect? I usually tell my buyers that it doesn't give them much protection unless it's recertified to them. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes. But if that survey is only 2 or 3 years old, that might be okay because they haven't changed anything since that done. But if you're dealing with a 20-year-old survey, I would say that it needs to be recertified. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank
And
you.
that, what I would do, Danae, is put down into additional provisions
Mhm.
that the buyer is requesting that the seller have, if they have a current one, like in number 10 in due diligence in the documents, okay?
Mhm.
You could put it there, additional provisions. That the seller, if they have a survey, the seller will get it recertified prior, 3 days prior to closing or something
Okay.
along that line, okay? But
Perfect.
yes, I would absolutely own surveys unless nothing has changed, which is very rare. You should have a surveyor and they go out for those of the other 2 people on the call. You go out when what they call shoot the pins. On 4 corners of any lot, they have copper pins, and that's how the surveyor finds can tell you what the land is, okay? Now, mineral or water rights. If you're going to have, the property comes with water rights, it takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks for an attorney to review the water rights on a property. You cannot have a quick closing on the water rights unless your buyer's going to give up that review issue. The same with mineral. Mineral rights are running 6 to 8 weeks for any mineral right attorney to review. So you can't have a quick closing. So all parties need to understand, and you can pick a water right attorney and a mineral right attorney, call and find out how long it takes them to review. And then when you have that issue, you know for sure if is it 6 to 8 or rarely is it 4, but usually 6 to 8 weeks out. So that's how you have to write your offer accordingly. Now, here's another place where agents misuse these dates. When your buyer says, I want an inspection and I'm only going to do health and safety, let's assume that. So you want to put inspection termination deadline, inspection objection deadline to be the same date, because when they do the inspection, they can they'll either terminate or they'll put an inspection objection in. Then you want to have your inspection resolution 3 to 5 days after your inspection objection has been received. But if you have an inspection and you aren't going to do an objection, but you're going to terminate, that's the date you do it. But if you gave the seller an objection, you cannot use the termination deadline as an out. You can't do that. Yeah,
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
I'm just curious, coming from a different office, you may have a different answer and I wanted to get your take on it. I had a deal last year and the buyer wanted to put in, they put in their inspection objection, and then a week later, they wanted to put in another one. Now,
Well,
my
you have to
broker-
withdraw one and then they have to put a new one in.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
And-
Because
which probably does not happen all that much, to tell you the truth.
it doesn't, and I had actually told the buyer's agent, I'm like, you already put in your objection, and then come to find out they can put in another one. I'm like, before the deadline, I'm like, that's highly, it's the only time it's ever happened.
It's very rare, Danae. It really is. A lot of times what will happen is on an inspection, they may not have gotten the reading for the radon yet.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they did an air test or a base paint test or something. Then what will happen is you want to write something into the objection that the seller will agree to repair the radon if the radon comes in high. So you want to submit, if you possibly can, you want to submit the most accurate objection you can.
So there's nothing that precludes the buyer's agent for putting in more than one objection.
Well, I would probably say you get one shot. You don't get three. All right.
That's what yeah.
Yeah, and you can do it, but I would I don't know that I would really say that to an agent, because you know as well as I do, there are some agents who are going to abuse that.
Yeah.
Totally. So I would tell anybody, and that's why when you get a contract as a listing agent, you want to look at these dates to find out if you actually can perform on these dates. And, or if you can't get your objection in, I would ask for an amend extend to extend it rather than submit an objection that's not complete.
I agree. It's the
Yeah.
only time I've ever seen it.
Well, I don't think that was appropriate. You can do it, but I don't like it. And I probably would have done exactly what you did. So
Thank
Yeah.
you.
the property insurance termination deadline, please do not assume your house is going to get insurance, hazardous insurance. Because of the fires and the floods that we've had here in Colorado, there are areas that have never been designated as floodplains now fall under, they remapped our state. And there are areas that are falling under floodplains, and you have to get the flood insurance from FEMA, and it's not cheap. It's $200 to $300 a month or more. And that could throw the ratios for your buyer off. So once you've gone under contract, make sure that you get those buyers to talk to their insurance agent, making sure they're comfortable with the payment and their coverage. The due diligence, delivery and objection and resolution. These would be used usually if there is a lease on something. So it could be an alarm system, it could be a hot water system, it could be solar, which is the normal one. But solar companies require buyers to qualify under their rules for being able to assume a loan on solar. So it's very hard to do. And so you have to be sure that you know that the buyers understand what that is. And the lender does understand what that is. And you need a copy of the lease, and you have whatever the rules are to assume. Okay. That's what you put into those three categories. Conditional sale here is when a house is under contract. And that means that it's under contract. And then you could say, let's say the closing date is December 3rd. And you put that in there, and then you go to additional provisions, and you, regarding paragraph 10, conditional sales, it's 10.7 actually, 10.7, conditional sale deadline. House at 123 Main Street is under contract. We've completed the appraisal, inspection, and waiting for closing to be closed on December 3rd. That is all you have to say. Nowadays, you're going to, as a listing agent, you're going to get more of conditional sales. And the question is to ask, how far along are you on your sale? And if you haven't done your inspection or something else, it's going to be a problem. But if you have, and everything has gone through and you're just waiting to close, more likely a seller should accept that because it's not a bad deal. And now we have our lead-based paint termination deadline. So now the listing agent has given you the lead-based paint here on this deadline, and you want it back, and this is what I would say, in 2 or 3 days after you've received it, because you don't want it to go all the way to closing. You want to get that taken care of immediately if there was going to be any inspection on it. So now we have closing date. So we have closing date, we have closing possession, and I'm asking everybody, please do not put after the delivery of deed or DOD or whatever crap everybody decides to put in here. Put a time. If you have to do amend extend because everything's been moved up before 5 o'clock in the evening, that would be fine. Then do an amend extend. It's not going to kill you to have it signed at closing or prior to closing, because you know now you're closing at 3 rather than at 4 or 10 rather than 4. You don't know one company, title company that closes after 4 o'clock to begin with. And so after closing, you get possession. So if you have your post-closing occupancy, you want to be specific on what you're putting in there. And I don't remember if there's, when we do contracts, there's one in there. And then we have, okay, Mr. Agent, here you go. I'm giving you our contract. I'd like an answer. You need to communicate with that listing agent to find out, 1, is there any offers? 2, are we talking about having, can you get to the seller? Can I get an answer today? Can I get an answer tomorrow, or whenever the time may be? Find out, because sometimes people who are sellers are elderly or they work, and you may not get this accepted at a time that's what you want. So it's always good if you can communicate by phone or text or email to the listing agent at what time can they reach their seller. That way there's not a lot of infighting here about who's going to do what. And then we have a time. So our deadline to receive it back or to say yes or no is a certain time. Again, I wouldn't make it late into the night. Latest, I'd probably make it as 8, because it's hard to make a decision when you have a lot of kids and the business and one thing or another. So make it a reasonable hour or make it the next day. So who has questions? Danae, do you have any questions?
No, thank you. You answered them all.
Good, good. Anybody else? I'm going to stop sharing here. Laura, do you have a question?
No, pretty straightforward so far.
Good.
Yeah.
Thomas, you never have a question.
No, usually
You're all
not.
good. He's all good. Okay, so next week, let me see what we're doing next week. Same time, we're going to do a listing contract. I will also tell you that in 2023, our listing contract is changing. I've already gone to one class. I have to pull the red line and clear line from Dora yet. And when I do that, I will make sure everybody has, you get to have those changes. They're not big, but some of them have been changed to clarify a lot of stuff and kind of go along with our buy-sell contracts. Our buy-sell contracts will not change until 2025. They will work on them in 2024. So there we go. And if anybody has questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see everybody next week.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.